Hey guys, Argent Templar here. So one of my personal interests, and this is from my background, which is research, political science, and statistics, and public opinion research, is elections and election results. So I figured I'd do a preview of sorts for the 2016 presidential election in America. Granted, my country's having an election in a couple months, but I don't really care about that. I may do a feature on that, but that's neither here nor there. So, a lot of people seem to be under the delusion that the Republicans can win the next presidential election. I don't know where they get this idea from. It's just, in my view at least, ignorance to how much things have changed and how much things have been changing for the last 20 to 30 years. Things have changed so much over time. I don't believe the Republicans can win elections anymore. I don't think it's even really possible. Even if they brought Ronald Reagan back from the dead and ran him, I think it would be irrelevant. I think it's over. The way the electoral system is set up, even if the Republicans won by a significant amount of the popular vote, they can't win by the Electoral College. So yeah, I think it's pretty much over. People say, well, a black guy's not going to be running next time, so the Republicans will have a better chance. Well, maybe, but demographics continue to go relentlessly in their favor, and they seem to not really care about doing anything about it, which is kind of where conservative came from. Them not caring about their own destruction, and if anything, willingly embracing it. So that all being said, let's look at the math and let's look at the changes to elections over time and why I don't think the Republicans have a prayer of winning. So, the presidential election 1984. There was two elections in the 20th century in which a president won all but one state. There was the election of, I think it was 1972. Yeah, 1972, in which Nixon won all but one state. With 60% of the vote. Something that I believe neither state, no party since then, I think, has ever matched that with 520. So Nixon won 49 states. Then we had the presidential election of 19. Oh, okay, I think Reagan got slightly more. Of 1984, in which Reagan won 49 states. And it's been a steady decline since there. Every election, more or less, the Republicans have lost popular vote and lost a percentage of the seats. So we're just going to go through these quickly, and then I will look at the specific county results, and you can see the change even more. So, Reagan, 58% of the vote, electoral vote, 525. So this was back during the 80s. U.S. presidential election, 1988. Bush, 53% of the vote, 40 states carried. It's important to note that Bush carried California, Bush carried Illinois, Bush carried states that are now dark blue. The Republicans would never win a lot of these states ever again, and stand no chance of ever winning a lot of these states ever again. This was I believe, the highest electoral vote. I don't think anyone since then has been able to match 426. So we go to 1992. So Bush lost a lot of the popular vote. That's largely to Ross Perot. So this election almost kind of doesn't count in my view, just because Ross Perot really messed up a lot of southern states. I think largely conservatives voted for Ross Perot, although the Reform Party kind of drew people from all across the political spectrum. So then we go to 1996, and Bob Dole only managed to pull off 40% of the vote. And it was another horrific failure. And as you can see, a lot of these states are moving towards blue. The Republicans succeed in holding on to most of the Midwest and the South, but outside of that, they're gradually being pushed back. Once again, though, this election is complicated by Ross Perot. So we get to the next real election, which is the election of 2000, where Bush narrowly won. So as we can see, California continues to grow in electoral votes, as does New York and Illinois. And those three states are now permanently lost to the Republicans, and they don't stand a prayer of ever getting them back. They aren't even competitive in them anymore. Bush managed to win Florida by a very narrow margin, but he lost the popular vote. And his popular vote of the Republican Party has declined since Nixon by a full 13 points. Since Reagan, it's declined just as much. So then we have 2004, in which Bush managed a slight recovery. But even so, the elections are very close, especially for an incumbent president. 261, 286. Very small margin of victory for an incumbent president. He managed to pick up a couple votes. Who knows, that could be due to Ralph Nader or whatever, but the Democrats' percentage of vote didn't change in that election. Then we get to the presidential election of 2008, which is kind of the beginning of the end, where Obama managed to take Florida, Virginia, and North Carolina away from the Republicans, a feat which will probably never be reversed. As you can see, Nevada is now a solidly blue state. New Mexico is now a solidly blue state. Colorado is a solidly blue state, as is Pennsylvania. The Republicans have permanently lost many of their former strongholds, many states that they used to depend upon. John McCain only managed to pull off 45% of the presidential vote, a full 5% loss from Bush, the Bush years. Now, if we look at Romney did not actually get that much more of the vote than McCain. He only managed to get slightly more, and he was a much stronger candidate, and there was much more anger at Barack Obama. But as we can see here, Virginia is now a permanently blue state. Colorado and New Mexico are permanently blue now. Pennsylvania is permanently blue. Ohio is, and so is Florida. So out of the get-go, let's see here. Sorry, I should have looked this up. If we discount Texas, so they have Texas, but of the 5 largest states, Illinois, Florida, California, New York, and Pennsylvania are now permanently Democrat. So let's see. If we add those electoral votes together, that's 84, 100, about 160 electoral votes or well over half of what you need to win, are already in the Democrat margin. They're solidly there. And that's not even counting some other smaller states that still have a fair number of electoral votes that will never go anything other than Democrat. So basically speaking, because they control the largest states in the union, the Democrats are pretty much guaranteed to keep winning elections at this point. As the population of solidly blue states continues to balloon, largely due to illegal immigration, etc., there's really, I don't see any way at this point in time that the Republicans will ever win another national election. So let's go in and look at it in terms of congressional districts, because the change over time was even more stark. So this is the election of 1984, in which Reagan won his landslide, capturing 84 states. Now, admittedly, this might be overly optimistic, and this might be unrealistic to ever expect the Republicans to do this well, but it's very stark. As you can see, the Republicans won many congressional districts by huge margin. The darker red it is, the more they won by, etc. So they managed to win virtually every congressional district in America, often by a huge margin. Then we go to the presidential election of 1988, and we see that they rapidly are losing. Look at that. Now, granted, Bush is a much less strong candidate, but we are beginning to see demographic transition, I believe, here, when Reagan gave amnesty. In particular, a lot of the regions that are Hispanic now, like in California and in the southern states, are now voting solidly Democrat. It's also New England, by this point in time, is starting to be permanently lost It's also important to note how a lot of the formerly dark red ones are now moving into the light red category. Then we move to the presidential election of 1992, and look at that change. Look at that. We had a lot of formerly solidly red states now are completely blue. This is partially due to Ross Perot, but at the same time, we have New England permanently lost. We have Florida, which used to be completely red, now slowly becoming blue. We have New Mexico is now completely blue. Um, so is Colorado is rapidly transitioning. The West Coast is permanently lost, as is the northern part of America. Um, Very rapid fall of the Republicans in terms of presidential elections in many formerly dark red states. Then we transition to the election of 1996. And despite Ross Perot not running, in some ways the results are just as bad or worse. The last few remaining Republican strongholds in the Northeast have completely vanished. The Northeast is now completely dark blue. All the red's gone. Just if you look at the Northeast while I'm clicking back and forth, see it's completely gone now. Florida continues to transition to blue, and the border regions and much of the South is starting to go blue as well, as is Illinois by this point in time, and the whole Great Lakes area is now completely blue. The Republicans only managed to hold on to some small parts of the South and the Midwest, which are the areas least affected by demographic transition. Bear in mind, Nevada and large portions of California are at this point in time still Republican strongholds. Then we go to the election of 2000, in which the Republicans managed to win, and they do manage to take back some of the districts, to a large degree probably due to Ross Perot. Ross Perot was a Southerner, so it kind of makes sense that he would win a lot of the southern districts. So he managed to take back some of the southern districts, and we see the Republicans retake gains in their traditional heartland. At the same time, though, New England remains permanently lost, as does California. They take back a couple of the rural districts, but the Great Lakes region, New England, Florida, and the West Coast is now, by this point in time, pretty much permanently a Democratic stronghold. So let's look at the election of 2004. Let's see here. Bush actually did a bit better in 2004. Why, I'm not really sure. That was a strange election. I don't know really how to account for that. He didn't really increase his popular vote by much. I think he increased it by a point or two. Carries remained completely unchanged. I'm not sure if it's just it was a war. The war was going on. If the disaster that was the Bush years hadn't really become relevant yet, or just illegal immigration hadn't had that much of an effect, I think politics hadn't really fully changed at this point in time. I know a fair number of Hispanics did vote for Bush for some reason. I think he won like 40% of the Hispanic vote. But we can still see the Northeast is pretty solidly Democrat still. This is not really the realigning election. This is kind of in the calm before the storm. Then we head into the election of 2008. I couldn't find the same type of map for 2008, so it's going to be a bit different. But as we can see, there is still substantial shifting towards the Democratic side. The Northeast remains and will always remain pretty much solidly Democratic. Now, keep in mind, these don't tell the whole story. Because New York, for instance, will be like a dozen counties, or a dozen congressional seats. This whole area is like virtually no electoral votes. It's a fair number of congressional seats, but it's not particularly many electoral votes. By this point in time, when we get into the election of 2008, we have Florida, North Carolina, Virginia. Let's see, how much do they win by Virginia? By a huge margin in oh no, that's Maryland. Virginia. Yeah, Obama wins by a considerable margin, and that's something that does not change. Virginia is now a solidly blue state. Florida is now a solidly blue state. California is permanently blue. Colorado is permanently blue. New Mexico is permanently blue. The Great Lakes states are permanently blue. And this is something Romney is completely incapable of changing. So we look at the election of 2012, and the results are virtually unchanged. I think the Republicans managed to pick up Illinois and North Carolina. Even so, it's extremely close in North Carolina, and I doubt they'll be able to win it next time. If we look at the future projections, they have permanently lost Nevada by this point in time, and the Southwest, which used to be a Republican stronghold, is gradually becoming blue. The amount of states that will vote reliably Republican are rapidly diminishing, and illegal immigration is whittling away at their remaining ones. Obama is currently doing a resettlement plan to try and turn these states blue by settling Muslim refugees there. Now then, we have, let's see here, the election 2012. Yeah, so pretty much similar trend. I believe what happened in 2010 was the Republicans gained control of redistricting, and they did some gerrymandering. So they were able to pick up a lot of congressional seats when they did the gerrymandering, but they really didn't. That doesn't affect the statewide vote. So once again, this looks like the Republicans have dominance, but cities have the vast majority of the country's population, and they are where all the electoral votes are cast. So then we come to the election of 2016, and as you can see here, Florida is moderately Democrat. Moderate states generally don't switch. Sometimes weak states do. Arizona, which used to be one of the most conservative states in the union, is now weak GOP. Georgia, of all states, is now weak GOP. The Northeast is now dark blue. Pennsylvania will probably never vote for another Republican. Virginia will probably never vote for another Republican. North Carolina is already in Obama's side of the column. New Mexico is now a dark blue state, and Colorado is now a strongly Democratic state. So the Republicans have lost virtually all of their electoral votes. Even Texas is no longer dark red. It'll still probably vote for the GOP, but they are gradually losing control of their traditional heartland. If we look at the current polls, and these will probably change, but at the moment, Hillary Clinton versus Trump in a matchup is going to win by about 10%. And let's go to Real Clear Politics for a minute, and we'll see it's really not looking good for the Republicans. Presidential election. Let's see here. President. If we look at the most recent matchups, let's see here. General election matchups. Bush versus Clinton. Clinton is projected to win by at least 5%. I don't think the popular vote really matters that much at this point in time because the Democrats basically will win in all the states where it matters to win, and the Republicans don't stand a chance of winning by electoral vote. Even by popular vote, though, we have Walker versus Clinton. Clinton is winning by 6%. You have to understand that is a truly massive lead. That is a almost insurmountable lead. Trump is 15% behind Clinton. Rubio is 6%. These are hugely significant numbers. Will they change? They probably will. But by this point in time, I don't really see what's going to happen. Now, what's interesting is the Republicans are winning by a large margin in terms of congressional vote. That's due to gerrymandering and also due to people not voting during off-season elections. White people, who are the majority of the Republicans' voting base, generally vote much more strongly for they come out and vote a lot more. So during off years, the Republicans pick up a lot of seats. Um, but overall, I don't know, guys. Oh no, that's 2000. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. That's 2014. That's last year. Yeah, so that was an off year. So yeah, that was expected. But overall, I don't know. I don't really see any scenario under which the Republicans can win at this point in time. I think it's largely a foregone conclusion that the Democrats will win. My advice is to try and take power at state level and enact social engineering there, because I really don't think the Republicans stand any chance of retaking the White House under any circumstances. I would probably just run Trump because he's going to lose, but he'll at least get the message out there, and he'll be good for the party's brand, and he'll be good for the movement. But at this point in time, you might as well run someone serious, because running a moderate isn't going to win an election. Romney didn't win an election despite Obama's horrendous job performance record. It's because voting is solely based on identity politics now. It more or less always was based on identity politics. White people just don't vote that way, though, at least when they're the overwhelming majority. So historically, the Republicans could rely on a majority white America to swing towards them, but that doesn't exist anymore. At least not to the degree that they need to win elections reliably. So I think it's pretty much over at this point in time, and I believe that the Republicans will lose the next election regardless of what happens and regardless of what the polls are. That's my opinion. That's my view on the matter. This is Argent Templar signing out.